Hello, it's Adedoyin Jaiyesimi here, and welcome to the first module of the Unpacking Corporate Communications course. It's a bite-sized comms course where I will be taking you through the fundamentals of the corporate communications function. And in this module, we're going to really look into it. What exactly is corporate communications all about? So come along on this journey. To start off, it's very important for us to have definitions. What is corporate communication? Now, if you Google this, there's so many definitions out there, but I took this two and I highlighted things that I want you to pay attention to and remember. The first is, or the first definition we have here is that corporate communications is the strategic management. And you should actually pay attention to that, especially when you are confronted with a scenario where people are not really appreciating the role of communications. One of the things that I like to do when I train, when I teach, is to help communications people to see just how important and valuable that role is so that you can begin to carry yourself in that way. So it is a strategic management function, it's not a support function. So it says it's the strategic management of all messages, both internal and external, to build and maintain a consistent positive image, reputation, and identity. So if you look at any organization, whether it is corporate or whether it is non-profit, communication sits right at the center, managing reputation, the custodian of reputation, trust, and the social license to operate. That is very critical and important for you to know. And so you manage this for an organization and you align stakeholders with the vision and the values of that organization through various channels, press releases, emails, social media. In fact, these channels here are secondary channels. The primary channels are the owned media channels of that organization, the website, whether they are on social media. In fact, even before you even go on social media, when I come into your building, when I come into your space as an organization, what exactly does it communicate? Everything speaks. And who manages all these touch points that are communicating? It's meant to be you. And so it ensures a cohesive message across all touch points, fostering employee engagement and external trust. And let me give you an example of this. So when you look at organizations and their websites, if you look at their core values, excellence, integrity, that's usually high on the list. Now, if an organization says they're committed to excellence, and then I go somewhere, I see their boss, I see, for example, something is falling off, maybe the side mirror is falling off, maybe the driver of that bus looks so tardily dressed, maybe I engage their employees and they just look so unkempt. That doesn't speak to excellence. So you can see that this is not just about what we post on our website, what we put on social media. It's really the embodiment of the image, the identity of this organization across everything that the organization does. And the reality of it is that it doesn't just sit with communications. I know I'm meant to be telling you about definitions, but I really want to bring it to life why this is very critical. So let's go to the second definition. It says to inform, to persuade, and to build a rapport with the company stakeholders. So this is what you want to achieve. Who are our stakeholders? How do we keep them informed? How do we persuade them to do what it is that we need them to do? How do we build a rapport that can then be something we can leverage on in times of crisis or in times where we need their buy-in? And so by achieving this corporate objective, corporate communication plays a pivotal role in the overall success and sustainability of the business. If you forget anything that I say today, that statement, please remember it. Corporate communications plays a pivotal role in the overall success and sustainability of a business. Any organization that is still playing with corporate communication, that is still putting it as an afterthought, is really actually playing with this overall or long-term sustainable success of their business. So that is what corporate communications is all about: managing reputation, identity, ensuring a cohesive message across the touch points, informing, persuading, and building your rapport, and then playing a pivotal role in organizational performance and the overall success of the organization. I really liked this quote. I saw it from OP Jindal University, and it says corporate communications is the heartbeat of organizational success, because when there is a breakdown in communication, things cannot move forward. Where there is a breakdown in the way that external stakeholders, even internal stakeholders, perceive an organization, there is a chance that their social license to operate will be withdrawn. And if any organization's social license is withdrawn, social license to operate, that's it. Like, it's gone. And trust is easier it's easier to destroy. How did they do that quote? I think it's easier to destroy trust than to build. It's very hard to build trust, but it's very, very easy to destroy it. And who is the manager of trust? It's you as a communications person. Okay, so we looked at the definition. We've said, look, this function is really at the heart of any organizational success, progress in performance. But why exactly does this function exist? What is the importance? One, which I've kind of started touching on, it preserves and protects corporate reputation, what people perceive about your organization, what it speaks for. You go into a supermarket and you're able to pick a particular water brand. Why? Because you trust that brand, because that brand has a reputation. If you go, sometimes I go for maybe like I'm going for an outreach or I'm going to a remote area and they bring me water. I'm very, very skeptical about drinking a bottle of water and I see some funny name because I'm like, ah, I don't know this brand. I don't know their safety standard or commitment to safety. I'm very, very wary. But if I go and they bring me like water from like Nestle, water from, Ever Water brand, they bring me any of those, I feel comfortable. Why? Because of the reputation of the organization behind that particular brand. So you as a corporate communications person, you are responsible for preserving and protecting corporate reputation. The second thing is, and we've seen that in the definition, it ensures cohesion and consistency of organizational messaging. And do you know that a lot of organizations still fail in this area? They say one thing on one platform, you engage them on another platform, they're saying something totally different. And this is something that leads to what is known as a say-do gap. And I see it a lot when I'm brought in to do a communications or a brand audit. The organization, the senior leaders, they say one thing. By the time I go and do the research, even the people on the inside, they're saying something totally different. So what they say and what they do, very, very different. So there needs to be some sort of cohesion in what we say, in how we behave, in how we present, and we say that thing consistently across multiple touch points. And I'll be sharing a case study of a brand that is really embodying communications best practice later on in this course. But what all of that comes to is building and nurturing trust. Trust right now is such a hot commodity. The Edelman Barometer, they released their Edelman Trust Barometer for 2026, where my employer was the highest trusted organization. And that should not even make organizations happy because it means that there's breakdown in trust for public institutions, there's breakdown in trust for the other institutions that people really thought that they could trust. And so now they're thinking their employer is their most trusted organization. It's not really a good thing. But what it means is that we have to make extra effort to build and nurture trust because we are in a world and in a system where trust is really, really fragile. Now, corporate communications can be leveraged to gain support and buy-in of multiple stakeholders. If your organization wants to list on a stock exchange, you want to take your business to another territory or another market. Leveraging corporate communications, you can get support and buy-in. And whether you're communicating with potential investors, you're putting together the deck, you're putting together the history, the stories, everything. Corporate communications, very important. And I'm taking my time to really break it down so that you can really see that your work is not just come and post. Your work is not just to come and make people look good. It's very central to the success of the organization, to achieving organizational and business strategy. And then the next thing is competitive advantage that can significantly improve organizational performance. Organizations that get communication right, where it's not just about what should we be saying, but what does the market perceive about us? How do we stay connected to our key audiences? How do we get feedback from them? How do we integrate that feedback? And how do we communicate that speaks to their needs? How do we communicate in a way that resonates? That then becomes a competitive advantage for that particular organization. It can also position an organization for superior market and industry leadership. And that's because of all of the things that I've said before. And in a time of crisis, this is very important. It then becomes a good defense because people trust your reputation. People trust the brand. Not that brands cannot make mistakes because brands and organizations are led by humans who are fallible available. But because you have a solid corporate communications, because you have built trust, because you have a good reputation, people can then stand up for you. You then have advocates that will stand on behalf of the organization. And so that crisis will not have the kind of effects that it should have had if they didn't have proper communications or the level of trust that is required. So these are just some of the key things that make the corporate communications function important. Now, what are the key elements? First is stakeholder management. There's a lot of relationship building that is involved in a corporate communications role. So for your stakeholders, whether internal or external, you need to understand and prioritize their needs. And now we have a lot of organizations are operating in a space where the stakeholder needs and priorities are very diverse. So it's now taking that stakeholder mapping framework to say, how do we begin to prioritize? If this is sounding new to you, please watch my comms course on strategic communications, where there is a module on stakeholder management, and I will put it in the notes for this particular course so that you can go and just refresh your mind. But you really have to. In fact, superior stakeholder management is required in the times that we're in now because stakeholders are more demanding, they are more unforgiving. And so you need to be able to know how to meet their needs in a way that aligns with organizational priorities. I'm not telling you to meet their needs and then your organization is making a loss. No, but how do we bring some sort of alignment? That's what you need to begin to really think about or steer the organization in that direction. So have oversight on those key stakeholder relationships. You may not be the one managing the relationships, but you are the one responsible for ensuring that communications, there are no bottleneck in communications, where there are insights coming from the external stakeholders. You feed the internal team, you feed the senior leaders with those insights so that it guides decision making. The next is internal communications. Now, this is a whole discipline on its own, and perhaps I will do another comms course focused on internal communications. But just as a summary, it's about ensuring cohesive communications with employees who are the internal stakeholders. So anytime you hear me say internal stakeholders, I'm referring to the employees. And it builds resonance with the organization's mission and vision, ensuring that they stay connected, ensuring that they stay engaged, and they understand the corporate purpose. Why are we here? What are we doing? And they derive a sense of fulfillment. You see, the thing about human beings is we really are about ourselves. We are naturally selfish. So somebody working in an organization, how do you get them to stay for as long as possible, to commit? So people need to be able to buy in to the organization's mission and vision. But beyond buying into the mission and vision, they need to be able to draw a straight line from their own personal goals and aspirations to whatever it is the organization corporate purpose is. And so they kind of have a sense of, as I am in this organization is getting me closer to the achievement of my own personal goals and aspirations. So they stay connected, they stay plugged in, they stay engaged. Next is public relations and media relations, and this has to do with the media. So you can see stakeholder management, external, internal communications, internal, then public relations and media relations, that's also external. That has to do with the external stakeholders and the media. And what we're doing here is we're shaping perception and maintaining support. So how do we engage them to achieve those outcomes? Next is issues management. I have a course on this. It's a paid course, which I would also hyperlink. But please, if you do not know and understand the principles of issues management, please, please, and let me add another please, go and learn it. And the reason is simple. We are in uncertain times. Issues are springing up, unprecedented issues, and things are springing up that organizations haven't had to deal with. And so you need to be able to know how to manage issues in such a way that they do not escalate into a crisis. You do not want to have a crisis, but I'm jumping ahead. So this involves staying on top of issues, staying on top of and ensuring that emerging issues are dealt with without impacting the organization's reputation. It involves environmental scanning. It involves being able to really spot, okay, this is happening. Is it going to escalate? Do we keep quiet? What do we do? How do we manage it so that it does not snowball into a crisis? These things In fact, you have to have mastery in it, especially in these times. Next is crisis management. For any corporate organization, gotta be prepared for a crisis. You don't prepare for a crisis when the crisis happens. You prepare for it before. And in the times, and I will keep making reference to the times that we're living in because it is a time of fragility. It is a time of uncertainty. Expect crisis, expect issues, and expect crisis. And crisis expected because if you don't deal with the issues properly, it then becomes the crisis. And so there's a need to have a coordinated approach to crisis that ensures the de-escalation of key issues, satisfaction of key stakeholders, and rebuilding of corporate trust. These two things, if you don't know it, please again, please learn it. And then sustainability, this has been emerging. So, how do we make sure that we're communicating the social conscience of the organization, ensuring that the organization operates for the good of all, not communicating in a way that is greenwashing, but in a way that is authentic to the organization's CSR commitments, social impact commitments, and that's really what it's all about. And doing it in a way that there's a technical aspect of sustainability, there's a storytelling aspect of it, and how do you begin to merge those two as part of the DNA of how this organization communicates. So those are just some of the key elements of the corporate communications function. Before I wrap up this model, I hope that that has brought more light as to what exactly this corporate communications function is all about. But here are some takeaways I want you to remember from this first model. One, corporate communications is a structured discipline that is expected to deliver specific results. I really need you to understand that there are results that you are meant to deliver in your role that goes beyond number of followers on social media, number of people, number of press mentions. It really sits at the heart of reputation. And again, I would also look at doing a course on reputation management because that's a discipline that needs to be mastered for corporate communicators. You also have to be clear that corporate communications has a strategic role in impacting organizational performance. In fact, if I were you, what I would do is I would sit down and just sit down and look at the entirety of your organization. How does my work impact sales? How does my work impact operations? How does my work impact HR? How does my work impact? So whatever different units you have within the organization, just begin to outline it because you have to really if you can't articulate it tangibly, then you cannot see the connecting points, and I really want you to see the connecting points. So sit down and do this exercise. How are we impacting on the achievement of business strategy? How are we impacting on getting this organization to where we need to be, and draw that straight line so you can begin to see the pathways that you can begin to leverage to build internal credibility for your function. And we'll talk more about this in other models, but start thinking about it and you can do that exercise. And the final thing is there are principles and frameworks that guide the effective delivery of the corporate communications function. This is not vibe. This is not wing it. This is not okay, anything goes. Please gain knowledge. And I'm happy that you're watching this video. And I hope that the rest of the models will give you some tools and practical frameworks that you can use to function in your role as a corporate communicator. So thank you so much for watching this first module where we've looked at the corporate communications function, we've looked at the definition, we've looked at why it's important, and we've looked at some of the key elements of this role. In the next module, we're going to be looking at core skills that every corporate communicator must master. Thank you for watching.